Welcome to KnotWork Myth and Storytelling. This is the show where ancestral wisdom meets the modern imagination. I'm your host and lead storyteller, Marisa Gowdy. I'm a myth worker, a story healer, and a writing coach. I'm the author of The Sovereignty Knot, A Woman's Way to Freedom, Power, Love, and Magic, and the founder of the Writer's Knot and Author's Knot communities. On KnotWork, we explore the mythology and folklore of Ireland and beyond. Whether you're drawn to Celtic culture and the power of the landscape, or whether you just like a good story and expansive conversation, you're in the right place. Falcha. If you love what you hear and want to support the show, I'd be so grateful if you become a paid subscriber to my Myth is Medicine newsletter over on Substack. Look for the link at the top of the show notes or visit mythismedicine.substack.com. Season 6, Episode 8. Invocation of the Rebel Ma with Saoirse Connolly. So you're probably used to hearing that request to support the podcast over on Substack by subscribing to the Myth is Medicine newsletter. To those of you who already do, thank you so much. You literally keep this show going. The production costs and the cost of the women who help me make this show are real. And it is something I want to keep doing. And these are an amazing folks who I want to keep supporting. And one way I do that, the main way I do that, is through the Substack subscriptions. And this week, coming up on Sunday, March 23rd at 10 a.m., I want to thank everyone who has offered their support to the show over the last few years, and those who are deciding to support the show for the very first time. We'll be holding our first Myth Workers Salon. I'm playfully calling it Sheila and the Myth Workers because we are still deep in Sheila Nagig season. And during our conversation together, we'll gather to immerse ourselves in this world of KnotWork myth and storytelling. We'll dream together. We'll talk about which stories have meant the most to us. I think there's a good chance you'll be inspired to go deeper with the tales we've told and maybe even begin to tell your own. Like I said, we're gathering together on March 23rd. If you're hearing this after the fact, consider supporting us because I have a feeling this is going to become a regular tradition. Find us at mythismedicine.substack.com. Once you've subscribed or upgraded your subscription, keep an eye out for an invitation to join us at 10 a.m. Eastern on Sunday, March 23rd. And again, to those who have been supporting the show for a while, Mila Buikas, I can't wait to meet with you, talk with you about these stories, find out what's touching your heart, and maybe you'll even tell me what story you'd like to hear next. I'm so excited to bring you yet another installment of our Myth Workers and Culture Makers series. In this particular episode, we meet Saoirse Connolly. She's a mother, mentor, activist, author, and founder of Rebel Ma Rising and House of the Wild Publishing. Born and bred in Dublin, Ireland, Saoirse carries the fierce spirit of her Celtic ancestors, storytellers, wisdom keepers, and rebel women who stood for truth and fought for freedom. Now living in Bali, she is leading a movement of modern-day matriarchs, reclaiming their voices, rewriting history, and alchemizing their personal stories into powerful legacies. Applications are now open to contribute a chapter in the 3rd edition of her best-selling anthology book and collective healing project, Rebel Ma, Leading in the Time of the Feminine, Women's Stories of Revolution. It will be published in July 2025 and will include divine feminine art by the legendary artist Dee Mulrooney. And yes, that's the same Dee Mulrooney you've heard on the podcast a couple of times before. You can also work with Saoirse in her one-on-one Liberated Woman Mentorship Program or come play at her annual Wild Feminine Leadership Retreat in Bali, happening this July. Well, I am thrilled to have Saoirse here on KnotWork Myth and Storytelling at last. So as is our way on the show, we start with a story. But this particular episode has a bit of a twist in that Saoirse is going to bring us on a journey that feels so much in alignment with everything that this show wishes to explore. So, Saoirse, will you bring us along with you?
I will, indeed. Thank you, my love. So it's Misha Saoirse, and if you can, just close down your eyes. And today we're just going to go on a little invocation of the ancestors. And imagining for a moment that we are sitting together around the sacred fire, holding hearts and hands, feeling the heat on our skin and the tingles of anticipation as we revel in the stories of transformation and sharing wisdom handed down through our lineages since the beginning of time. Taking a deep breath in as we call in the divine feminine, the inner knowing within each of us, the feminine wisdom, knowledge, power, softness, resilience, and strength. We call the women who have gone before us mothers, Maher, grandmothers, Shan Maher, great grandmothers, wise women, Banfasa, storytellers, the Shanki, and sisters, to be with us. Remind us to trust life, to trust the process. Remind us to simply be with what is our awesome selves, powerful, creative, yielding, and wielding. We call the ancient goddesses that women have called up forever, guardians of the gateways. We give thanks for answering our call. We give thanks for peace and love and joy, harmony and justice, for happiness, for insight, for safety, for fun, and for freedom. We call on the archetypes of the divine feminine, those energies that cannot exist without us calling on their qualities. We call on the maiden energy and the Celtic goddess Sheila Nagig, who will rekindle our sense of sensuality and awaken us to our sovereignty and creativity. Allow Sheila Nagig to breathe life into our weary hearts and art, to rekindle our joyous, rebellious spirits and creative genius, and to give us the insight to embrace the mess that wants to dream to life through us. We evoke the mother energy and the triple goddess, Bridget, to show us that it's okay to shed our skin, to move through the portal of death and rebirth and be born again. We call on her to sit with us around the fire of transformation, to ignite the flame of creation from deep within our wombs, and to remind us of our power to conceive, create, gestate, and birth not only babies, but ourselves, our businesses, our dreams, and our visions. We invite the illuminated goddess, Bowen, liberator of wisdom and wild woman energy, to help us courageously embody Imbas, the inspiration that illuminates, and share our gifts and our voices in service to others. The wild woman is deeply connected to nature. She walks her own authentic path while guiding and protecting those who need her. The wild woman reclaims what has been stolen or has been unknowingly sacrificed, like the Selkie who may lose her skin only to find it again. We ask Danu, the great mother goddess of Ireland, to guide us in the direction of our dawn, our destiny. We call on her wise woman energy, the ultimate mother who possesses a power like no other. She who is unafraid to bear her true self, her soul. She embodies timeless beauty that illuminates from the inside out. She wants less, not more. She knows who she is and what she's here for. And last but not least, we meet our rebel matriarch, our oracle energy, welcomed by the 13 sacred grandmothers, Shan Maher and Nifa, in the belly of the earth, who are so happy and proud to see us. It's time to heed the call of the rebel Ma and unleash our matriarchal medicine that knows what's best for ourselves and our children, to come home to the mother and to understand that mother is a marsupial word. Mother holds the word other, a reminder to stand for ourselves and stand for each other, to come into maturity and take our seat on our throne as queens of creation, as ancestors in training, and future elders in our lineage, keeping the wisdom, traditions, and stories alive, and becoming the mother, the lover, the leaders our communities and the earth needs now. Welcoming in the old ancestors, we give thanks for your guidance. Thank you for tending to the fire of humanity since time immemorial. Thank you for rekindling the memory of our sacred ancestry. We feel your wisdom flowing through us, trusting we are co-creating with you and the divine as conduits of the new paradigm and sharing what's most meaningful to share for the highest good of all. We feel your call to step up into more sacred activism, to end oppressive systems once and for all and demand liberation for all. We give thanks for the strength in the bone and the love and the blood of our lineages joining hands across land masses, from Ireland to Bali, where I now stand, honouring the ancestors of this land, and all the way over, extending our hands to you there in Turtle Island. We belong to the land. We are children of the earth. We hear your call to fight for her and to fight for humanity through this collective rebirth.
Oh, Saoirse, thank you so much for taking us in so deep into the lineage, to the ancestors, to our own sacred grandmothers, the goddesses of the land and of the earth. Oh, I know I was supposed to be closing my eyes, but I was just my hand was so busy with taking notes as it just felt as if there were so many gorgeous lines and, of course, beautiful names that you evoked. But the thing that really stood out for me that I think I've understood now in a new way that I've known of you, but could never really got until now is the Rebel Ma herself. And I know that's a name that you use in so many different ways, but you walked us right into her heart and into her arms. And I really just want to say thank you for presenting something that is at once obviously so ancient and rooted in so many different shared stories. And that also feels so uniquely yours. And that's something I know that you're sharing with so many people now. So it's just that sort of gorgeous continuum of creation of taking these big, huge ideas and pulling them through yourself and then offering them anew. That's just imbis forosni. It's inspiration that illuminates in action. So thank you for inviting us to sit with you in this and journey with you in this. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here to sit with you around the sacred fire and to just evoke these beautiful magic, this driocht that I know you always do. And I sit, listening to you often with lots of the beautiful guests that you bring on, and it always inspires me and leaves me feeling with that sense of belonging. So yeah, it's really beautiful to be here.
Mm. And it's always such an honor to hold space for these episodes that tend to call in so many of the goddesses into one space. Because certainly we've had episodes on Sheila, on Bridget, on Bowen, on Danu. And then there's like time to time when we have certain guests who come in and bring them all in and weave them together, fitchafuicha. So I'm excited to be sitting with you and calling in, well, the everyone and seeing where it might take us today. Thank you.
Mm.
There's so many places we could go with this, but now that we've set the stage and called in the universal, I want to actually ask you to start with the individual and tell us a little bit about your journey to be here in this moment, holding space, both for the ancients and the ancestors. And also, I think we'll get to how you hold space for folks now moving into the future. But can you give us a little bit of an insight into your story and how you've arrived here?
Mm. Well, as I said, it's Misha Saoirse, which means freedom in Irish, for those who don't know. And I was born and bred in Dublin, Ireland. But when I turned 25, my wild and restless soul, went traveling the world into the unknown. And I landed in Australia, well, the land so-called Australia. And yeah, I was like, I'd studied journalism in uni and I was following in my father's footsteps, who was a journalist, and I got a job in RTE, my first job out of uni. But I just had this draw and this deep desire to go and see the world, adventure outside of Ireland, which I did. And just after I left, it was 2007, the global financial crisis hit. And I was only supposed to be going away for a year. But then, Ireland turned to shit and my job was gone from RTE and everybody was just like in pretty struggle street. So I ended up just staying in Australia, got a great job as a communications officer in a union out there and got sponsorship and worked my way up there and into the peak union body in New South Wales as the communications director. And while I loved my job, there was a lot of toxic masculinity, a lot of nepotism, and, a lot of stuff that I just wasn't comfortable with. And it didn't light my soul on fire as much as I loved social justice. And I loved, supporting people and sharing stories. This is where I began to share stories and write the magazines and get the media to highlight the great work that unions were doing. And yeah, it was like I decided then I found yoga on that kind of journey too. And I found meditation and I began to go down this spiritual path while I was still working in the union movement. And it just became less aligned for me to be doing what I was doing. And I had this deep desire to serve on a bigger scale, to step out into the world, to help bring healing and facilitate more awakening within people, which is what I kind of delved into for a couple of years and went on to work in another job. But, none of it felt good. I really wanted to continue to step more into my power, into my dawn, which was to serve other people, to help other people to heal and awaken. But obviously it's so loaded, isn't it? That kind of that courage to really go out and to create a life on your terms and to share your magic and own that shit and like stand up and say, this is what I'm here to offer the world. And of course, I studied all sorts of different lineages and all sorts of different courses and, really tried to fill up my toolkit. And then I had kids. And I think my pregnancy with my first daughter was the great awakening for me because it really helped me to see how much we'd been disempowered as women, how much we'd been robbed of our rights of passage, how much we'd been just kind of made to be on this conveyor belt and to be stripped of our power in the time when we are the most powerful we could ever be. So I really, really took ownership of my pregnancy, of my birth story. And I really turned over all the stones inside myself that might get in the way of me having a really empowered birth. And, the conception of Fia was like really powerful. It was actually, I'd had an early pregnancy loss and I didn't even know that I might be pregnant. But, when I realized I was 35, I'd been in Ibiza having the time of my life. And it turned out that I kind of had an early pregnancy loss. And when I got home from Ibiza, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was dying. And she was in her hospital bed and she had all of her 8 children around her. And I'd been kind of playing the game of the eternal teenager, like having a great time and traveling around the world and just, living my life. But then I realized in that moment, losing what I never knew I had made me realize how much I wanted it. And it was that moment that I sat by my grandmother's bed and I said, please, help me call this baby in. I'm ready to create life and legacy. And, it just made sense. That's all that mattered, having family and children around you. So it was in that exact cycle that Fia landed and she passed away and Fia was conceived and I came back. Yeah, it was really, really magical when I came back to Australia. And yeah, I went on a weekend of healing because I felt really guilty about the loss that I'd experienced and that, my party and ways had maybe contributed to that. But I went to a healing weekend and I really allowed myself to be seen in this shame and blame that I was experiencing. And I declared there and then that I wanted to create this healthy vessel to be able to hold and carry life and legacy. And then I did this breathwork session where this beautiful little girl came to me and just danced around in a field full of daisies with her, and I felt so liberated and I felt so free. And it was like this story that I told myself, this eternal maiden that I was holding on to, that like the mother season might be hard, or it might be a struggle, or that I wouldn't be free. All of that dissolved away, and I realized, no, this is my next step. This is my next evolution. This is what I want from life. And I have goosebumps just thinking about it, because it was such a beautiful moment. And yeah, a couple of weeks later, I found out that I was pregnant with Fia. Like, she was there and she came to me, and that's it. I just took on the role of mother from there and then, and I really enjoyed and embraced the experience and allowed myself to be undone and to let go of all the masks that I'd held on to, that, were holding me back from my true authentic self, because like I thought that I had to be a party animal to belong, and I'd all these stories that I had made up about myself. And it was the first time in my life I could be free. I could say I don't want to drink without anyone asking me, was I sick or pregnant? You know how Irish people are. And that was the beginning of me really owning who I am, and learning everything that I could, and there was this kind of, I felt the hands of my grandmothers on my womb space, like whispering to me to step up and hold space for my sisters. And that's how I really delved into learning about birth and training as a doula and a yoga prenatal, so that I could share everything that I was learning with others and empower others, while also empowering myself to be able to have an experience that was going to, bring my baby into the world peacefully and powerfully, like she deserved to be.
Oh, Rebel Ma, there's the story. Wow. Thank you so much for pulling us through the deep end with you. And I think that so many people, I'm sure, resonate with aspects of that journey, and that sense of all the places of loss and rebellion and what we think rebellion is. Because I think now you embody such a sacred kind of rebellion, just in what you named, in terms of calling us through that story, where through the story and also through the visualization, through the journey, is that there's a rebellion in looking to the oldest, deepest goddesses to understand our truths today. And there's a rebellion in looking to the ancestors as really generative forces in our lives. And then the way you're just so clearly evoking why we need to do this magic for ourselves in this moment, because the world so desperately needs sacred rebellion and healing, and that sort of activism that you embody in so many ways to get us to wake the fuck up, right? Gently,
Yeah.
with love, and also wake the fuck up.
Yeah, well, that's it. So many are asleep and just not aware of the power that we actually have, within, when we, yeah, it's like sometimes it's like giving people a hug, but shaking them awake at the same time. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what we need, and that's what is needed. Because yeah, there's so much power in reclaiming our rites of passage as women, in surrendering to the seasons that we're in calling on the ancestors, and knowing that we're not alone in this journey, that we have a fucking 3,000 ancestors behind us that are rooting for us, that we deserve to be in this moment, doing what it is that we came here to do, being who it is that we came here to be, and doing the work that's necessary to be able to get out of our own way, to get to the place where we can, like after I had Fia, I went back to my corporate job, and then in my second kind of conception of my baby, Bodhi, was when COVID hit. And I just really, everything changed in the world. And that's when I really delved into the ancestral work, because I delved into the womb healing. And I really went deep there, because I wanted a baby and he wasn't coming through. And I knew he was out there. Into my own womb and kind of do some healing and releasing. And it was just a journey to get to know myself more intimately, to really, really connect deeply to the lineage of women that came before me, and to heal, and to give back what wasn't mine, to hold, and to create a portal for, it was just like, womb healing is just incredible to connect to your ancestors. And it was at that time that when I had Bodhi, that I connected with, Jen Murphy, who was all about the ancestors, the Celtic, goddesses. And she brought me on a journey to meet the sovereignty goddess. And I was like, fuck yes, this is what I'm talking about. This is the missing piece of the puzzle. It was just incredible to learn about our ancient mythology, that there was a certain depth lacking in all the personal development and even the yogic study, because I didn't resonate wholeheartedly with it. It wasn't mine. These deities, ancient Hindu goddesses, they weren't from my lineage. Mm-hmm. And when I realized that we actually are part of an ancient lineage, and we have such incredible mythological stories and warrior goddesses, and it was really eye-opening for me. It activated something in me, this deep remembrance that that I am a goddess too, and that I am a warrioress, and I can be as fierce and as fearless as they were, and also as soft and surrendered. And so the feminine isn't all about just flowery dresses and dancing around naked.
Yes. Well, I love that you mentioned Jen Murphy, because of course she's a mutual friend of both of us, and Jen's been on the podcast many times. And she's actually someone who came in and told a story of weaving different goddesses together. She had an episode we called Fitchafuicha. So there's just these ways in which I love how we've created a global community. Some of us have met in real life. Many of us have not yet had the chance to do so. And there's always hope that, the next trip over will bring us all together. But there's such a fascinating thread for this in me, in the sense that you're in Bali. I'm in the Hudson Valley of New York. You've evoked Ibiza and so-called Australia. And, knowing that it's like the global map is lighting up with different spaces that we're naming. And we also know that there's a set of we're also naming these specific goddesses who are related to rivers and hills and bits of the land of one tiny island on the planet. And, those who listen to this podcast know that I'm constantly in this level of marveling over and worrying about and wondering about what it means for us to be in such deep relationship with these specific deities who are, Bowen herself related to the Boyne, these different beings who are so imbued with the spirit of a place. And yet we may be in relationship with them from thousands of miles away. And I'm just curious about what your thoughts have been, about what your experiences have been as you've been, deepening this relationship from afar. What's that like for you?
Yeah, it's incredible, actually. Because, I was very interested in history growing up in Ireland, but it was modern history and all about, the wars that we had. And that was like, I got an A in history in my Leaving Cert, which was my claim to fame back then. But I never really knew about the ancient mythology. It just wasn't part of my it wasn't something that I'd learned about or that I was interested in until I went to live in Australia. And when I began to wake up to the reality of, the Indigenous people in Australia and their connection to country, because I was a yoga teacher and I was one of the few that would do a welcome to country at the tops of my classes. And I was invited to the reciprocity action plan for Yoga Australia, and we had this beautiful ceremony on a beach down in the south coast of New South Wales, where I got to meet a lot of Indigenous elders, and I got to really create a beautiful relationship and learn more about their languages and their lore. And then I realized, oh my God, there's so much similarities between them and, us Irish people. And in that same kind of time, I got to know Anya Tyrrell, who's an amazing Irish singer, who was singing about how the Irish people became the colonizers and went to Australia, and we need to all come together and support the Indigenous people, because 33 and a third is a fucking revolution, and that's how many people is needed or that's how many Indigenous people and Irish people of Irish lineage are in Australia. And it was then that I woke up to the connection to the ancestry and meeting, just other, as you said, a global community of women talking about the rich matrix of our heritage. And it woke up something in me that I really a remembrance, I guess, and just a sense of belonging and a sense of connection and a sense of sovereignty, I guess, and just this beautiful invitation to be who I am and to stand for who I am and to feel connected from so far away because I was so lonely at that time. It was a time when, we couldn't get back home with COVID and everything. And it just gave me something to hold on to. And it gave me a newfound gra for my land, for my lineage. And it gave me such a deep connection and I wanted to just delve in more. And yeah, I just really resonate with them, with their strength and with their beauty and with their craziness too and their messiness. They're real and they're raw and they're not pretending that everything is all sunshine and rainbows. So I like that because it was a time where we all woke up to the fact that life is messy and shit is crazy and we all need to find our fierceness too and stand up for what we believe in.
Yeah. Our goddesses and saints need dirty cloaks because we do too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, as we are mentioning Australia and knowing that I think that's the only continent where marsupials live, I want to just bring our attention to that fabulous line you have that mother is a marsupial word and the way that other is contained within it. And it's just one of those like, oh, I'd never thought of the marsupial nature of that. The mother, other, okay, I can feel that. But can you take us deeper in to what that means for you and how that maybe has been embodied in your work?
Mm. Well, I guess, the mother archetype, it's when we die to the maiden and the selfishness and the, needing to be saved and we become our own savior and we mother ourselves and we mother the world. And I feel like mother's compassion needs to arise in every human being right now, not just women. It's not a gender issue. It's just that sense of compassion and understanding and empathy and love, unconditional love, to stand up for the children, to protect children, to protect the world, to stop raping and pillaging the earth, because what's been done to women is being done to the earth for so long now. And I guess like just knowing that word other, it means that we have a duty and a responsibility to mother each other, to tend to each other, to look after each other, and to be in this thing together and to not keep turning a cheek or just worrying about, what's in front of you. We have to take a bit of a bird's eye view and really look at the ways that we can contribute to, collective liberation, to, the journey of personal liberation and collective liberation. It needs to be intertwined. It can't just be a personal individual thing. Of course we get to heal individually. Of course we get to pour into ourselves and look after ourselves and take rest when we can and self-care where we can. That is obviously the first step. But then what do we do with that? What do we do with that strength that we've cultivated? What we do with that knowledge and wisdom that we're learning? What do we do with it? How do we go out there into our communities and share in a way that's going to benefit others who might be a little bit less fortunate than us, or need each other to stand up and be counted for one another?
Mm. Well, that seems like a beautiful entree into the work you're doing now, because you named sort of your corporate journey and that need to knowing that was of service and then needing to get out of it. But you're doing a very different kind of work right now that offers a sort of a different kind of service and a different way of holding other women creatives. And I'm sure holding their own mothering energies as they figure out how to get their stories out in the world. Do you want to talk a little bit about the work you're doing right now?
Yeah, I'd love that. So Rebel Ma is like an anthology book. Well, it's a movement, really, that is based around storytelling. But the way I came to it was because, as I said, I was in this corporate role, but I'd been learning all the tricks and tools of the trade to be able to step more into my own power and my own work in the world. And when I was pregnant with my son Bodhi, I wrote a chapter in an anthology book called Intuitive Knowing Her Truth. And just that title really spoke to me. And I thought, well, I'm a writer, I've been writing all my life and this can't be that hard. And, 3,000 words or whatever it was. But my God, did it bring me on a journey, because it was really asking of me to step into who I said that I wanted to be, to really draw a line in the sand and be a stand for this intuitive, empowered woman that I said that I was within the chapter of writing the story. And yeah, it took me on a total journey into the depths. And, I had to sit in the fire of my feelings, and I had to really burn away everything that, and unbecome everything that I thought I was, to become the woman and the writer and the facilitator that I said that I wanted to be. And in that journey, it kind of struck me how much there is involved in writing. It's not just writing, especially when it's about yourself. There's a whole different ball game. So when I did give up my corporate career, and I was, I really didn't want to just be a coach. I needed to give something tangible. I needed to give something for people to hold in their hand. We've all been on healing journeys and with coaches that just didn't really do what they said on the tin, or, just this bloody hamster wheel of healing. Like, this is a journey where it's an initiation, and you get to actually become the woman that you say you want to be, and hold it in your hand, and then pass this down your family tree and let people see who you are. Let people get to know that inner part of you that it might never be known. It might never be told if you don't tell it. If you don't want to die with the dance still in you. So anyway, I went home to Ireland for 3 months when I'd given up my job, and my husband had said to me, let's go and live in Bali, and he started to work online, and we had an opportunity where we just said, right, we'll go ahead of our wedding, where we were getting married here, and we'll give it a go. The kids are really young, and, I'll step into my work too. And when I went back to Ireland, I still wasn't clear what I was going to do. But, I'd been in the business of sharing stories for 15 years in communications and PR. And, I went home, and I was in Achill Island, which is this beautiful, island on the coast of Mayo. And I asked the land, like, what is my next step? Like, what do I do now? And in that moment, my husband's mother, Jer, came to me, and she said, she's an ultimate rebel ma, she's one of the first Black women in Ireland, and she's really like just brilliant. She's a brilliant woman. And she told me she's writing her story, and she just doesn't know what to do with it then, but it's such a cathartic process. And I was like, well, I know what to do. I can help you. I can help you get that story out there. I can help you work through the emotions. I can help you heal. And feel what it is that's coming up for you through this journey. And, then it's like, yeah, rebel ma, like it's such an Irish, but the word ma is in all sorts of different lineages. And it's a really powerful word. And I just felt that's what came, right? It's rebel ma. Rebel ma needs to be told, every single rebel ma within us. And she doesn't have to be a mother, in the mother season of her life. But these stories get to be told, these stories get to be shared, and it's such an honor to be able to hold the space. So when I went back to Bali after my trip to Ireland, I just opened it up, and, I set up my own publishing house. It's an indie publishing house, but I specialize in anthology books, because it's like, there's so much magic and medicine in women coming together. Like, it's an entity and an energy all of its own. And when women come together to share their stories and be seen and witnessed in their stories, and for us to give justice to their stories, to believe women when they tell you their story, like, that's already game changing, It's really, really epic.
Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous. Oh, there's so many pieces that all come together to make any book. But as you're doing it with such a gorgeous communal sense of really going into a woman's own constellation of stories and experiences. And then a lot of this work actually has like a group component to it, right? Because isn't that what's sort of happening for you as you start at the spring equinox? You're moving into, well, I should probably say around March 20th, because knowing that as we speak of Australia and we know that our seasons are different on different parts of the globe, that you really do it in a communal sort of way, right? Which I love, because I mean, my work, of course, is around writing communities as well, and knowing that in being together in the pulling through our individual words, that's where so much of the magic happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. It's just, It's beautiful because everybody's going through the same kind of things and the same fears, maybe at different times, different blocks, and when we can actually just like work to alchemize it together. But what I do is I kind of walk the women through a rite of passage in the sense that we move through the phases of the feminine. We call on those. That's why we evoke them at the beginning. Like we do call on the energy of the maiden, and we call on the Celtic goddesses and ancestors to support us. And, we weave together strategy and soul and ceremony to make it a really deep and meaningful journey. And so we meet every 2 weeks, and we have different kind of themes that we work through to get to the part where we birth the book then together. Because I obviously am a doula by trade as well, I bring in very much the elements of birth, like conception and gestation and birth and rebirth. So it's all kind of part of the cyclical wisdom of the feminine, and we call on the wisdom of the goddess and the ancestors to support us too. So it gives you a book at the end of the day. There's a strategy in place to help it get out there on the global stage. And then it's like, right, how can we amplify these voices? And the first book was obviously a lot of women responded to me via social media. And, the second book, it just took on an energy of its own. And I really wanted to have more intersectionality in there, more women who really were on the front lines of this shift in paradigms, who were like, really fighting these oppressive systems and really, so I have women from Palestine, women from Lebanon, women from Africa, women from, the Cherokee Nation, and women from all over the world, Indigenous Australian women, being able to share their stories and amplify their voices because they're very marginalized and they need us to uplift them and to amplify them and to give them the mic, and to be able to tell their stories in a way that doesn't cut through the noise usually. And that's a real honor and a privilege to be able to do. And all of the women who take part in our book are contributing to that, because we're giving back to those who need a stage and a mic more than any of us.
Oh, oh, Saoirse, what a gorgeous place to land where you begin by inviting us to really walk with these goddesses of a very specific place. And then you've just brought us to that full circle of women of people from around our gorgeous, wounded, beautiful, hopeful globe. So thank you so much for sharing your magic today and bringing us on this journey. It's been such a treat to sit with you.
Thank you, darling. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to KnotWork Myth and Storytelling. Please subscribe and review the show on your favorite podcast platform, and do share this episode with other lovers of mythology and story. By the way, everyone is a lover of mythology and story, even if they've forgotten. Creating this show is a labor of love, and your support will help me continue to craft and share stories throughout this season and beyond. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter, Myth is Medicine, over on Substack, where you'll find new writing and conversations each week. You can find out more about my writing, my book, our online writing communities, as well as how to work with me as a writing coach at marisagowdy.com. Gratefully, I live, write, work, and record this podcast on the ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape tribe, whose name means original people. Music on this show is performed by Beth Sweeney and Billy Hardy.